Lega, can you please go ahead with your 3 minutes input? Thank you.
Problem enkulu tell us no matter
You've got to say, please unmute yourself.
this been developed to detect coronavirus. Now, in the
Sisbalega, unmute.
Mute.
Yes, ngingaqala Maqabane.
Yebo Sisbalega.
Andrew Mlangeni was among a galaxy of a special generation of leaders, among whom we had comrades Govan Mbeki, Rolihlahla Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, Gertrude Shope, Tatu Kati, Tatu Fazi, Dorothy Nyembe, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Ahmed Kathrada, Joe Slovo, Ruth Mompati. And there are many more, but I had to mention some of them, who were the cream of the leadership that had brought us through the constitutional process and into parliament. Their presence in parliament made whatever strangeness in the experience bearable. It was sobering and reassuring. Whenever necessary, they reminded us of organizational culture, values, and policy. As a member of the ANC caucus for 2 decades, the consistency of being a living example of loyalty, uprightness, discipline, and strict adherence to focused commitment to areas of deployment has left a rich legacy for all of us to follow these footsteps.
Ngoba abanye babukela ku-TV.
TV bengenaso.
Ngingaqhubeka Makabane.
Yikho ngithi la yibo laba abathumela ama-message ama-members. Bathi umntwana
Can I continue?
Please, comrade, mute. You are disturbing comrade Balega. Please mute. Comrade Balega.
Comrade Mavivi and I, only yesterday, were laughing like little girls, remembering and reminiscing about those early days when we had just landed from exile and we were in Shell House, led by Mayor Gertrude Chope. We remembered how much Mlangeni was among the few who were very approachable, and we would always go to him for guidance on any matter. When he came to Parliament, just to go through a few highlights of his service, he was from May 1994 a member of the Constitutional Affairs Committee. He was also a member of the Portfolio Committee on Sport and Recreation from July 15, 1994, as well as a member of the Portfolio Committee on Transport and a Portfolio Committee. He also came in 97 to the National Assembly. I think the first 2 years he served as a member of the Senate at the time before it became the NCOP. Comrade Mlangeni was a very focused member of Parliament, very exemplary, selfless, and simple, just not carrying himself like a leader. Because in fact, you would have, being his age and being the kind of person with the experience that he had. He was a co-chairperson of the Ad hoc Committee on Reparations from May 2003 and was a member of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs from the 30th August 1999 to September 2002. In the last term that he served, he was a member of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military until May 2014, as well as a member of the May 2014. Comrades, there are comrades who are talking and therefore they confuse and frustrate me. My last point, comrades, is that as one of the frontline torchbearers,
no, I want to go back to them.
taught and helped many of us as a young generation and those that are younger than us.
No,
That he was exemplary in not only serving our people, but also in shaping a certain caliber of member of the ANC. A non-assuming cadre who will never use his political credentials to climb the ladder and get into positions of power. A diligent, honest, and loyal member of the ANC till the end. Hamba kahle Mkhonto, hamba kahle Qhawe, hamba kahle Nkokheli yabantu. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Thank you to our esteemed speakers for reflection on the hard work and dignity that Comrade Mlangeni brought to the People's Parliament. The contribution that our leaders and cadres made always come at great sacrifice to our to their families.
To climb the ladder and get.
They graciously share their loved ones with the struggle, the people, and the movement. May June Mlangeni kept their fires burning as Babu Mlangeni spent the time in prison, and his children too spent many years hard work
and dignity that Comrade Mlangeni brought to the People's Parliament.
By the
contribution that our leaders and cadres
throughout his life. The representatives are daughter Sylvia Mlangeni and granddaughter Mlangeni. Over to you, family members. Daughter Sylvia Mlangeni and granddaughter Mlangeni. What is it for you?
He was a loving parent. He became a mother when our mother passed away. We depended solely on him, all of us, and we are deeply hurt. He always said when there was a bereavement within the family, he used to say, "Muthu hanke ayakhuthaza, ha hlahetswe ke lefu." And now today I know what he meant when he said that. It's difficult for a guy khuthaza how to esonally e olohlelwa ke motswadi. Re lahlehetswe re le bana ba Mlangeni le ditloholo tsa hae. Re utlwile bohloko haholo. We are lost for words. I don't know what to say really, because when he went to hospitals before he passed on, it was on a Tuesday. He said, if they say they want to admit me today, I will say to them, no, not today, but tomorrow. And we all thought that yes. We thought that he would come back because he was walking, although he was being aided by us. And he said, I'll come back and pack my bags for admission the following day. I said to him, why do you want to be admitted the following day? If doctors say they will admit you today, why would you say you want to be admitted the following day? He said, I don't know. And we just laughed about it. And we thought, no, maybe they'll treat him and he will come back home. Sorry. We thought that he'll be treated and come back home. Not knowing that we were seeing him for the last time. We will miss him. We'll miss him deeply. He was not only our father, the family of Mlangeni, all the family of Mlangeni and the Ligwabas will miss him dearly. As I said, he was not only our father, he was a father to everyone, every South African. As a person who went for 26 years, not only for us, his children and grandchildren, but for all South Africans. We shared him with the world. When we wanted something from him as his children, he would rather say, I will help you, but first of all, I will help someone who is not my child. That's how much he loved South Africa, the people of South Africa. We have lost a pillar. We have lost a father. We have lost a grandfather, a great-grandfather. He's leaving us with heavy hearts. My sister Maureen, my younger brother-in-law, our children, I can't count all of them, 10 of them, and great children, we will always miss him. Always miss him. But because we know that he would not want us to cry, but instead celebrate his life. We will do that, we will celebrate with his life, but knowing that he did not die in vain. Yes, he was very ill. He recovered, he got ill and recovered and so on, and his age was not on his side. Last year he said, on his birthday, he said, Tate Mandela departed when he was 95. Robert Mugabe departed when he was 95. I think next year, meaning this year, when I turn 95, I'll follow them. And it really happened. We will miss him. Thank you.
Program Directors, the ANC Secretary General, Dr. Isma Fashule, the esteemed international friends of South Africa, China, UK, Namibia, and many more, trustees of Julian Andrew Mlangeni Foundation, the alliance partners of the ANC, OSATU, SACP, all fellow speakers who spoke and those who are still going to speak. I greet you all. Kulu was a man of order and keeping time was his second nature. So let me cut to the chase and say all protocol observed. My name is Mlangeni, one of the many grandchildren of Kulu, and Mlangeni. I'm the granddaughter of a man who was born on a farm under a system that one could characterize as feudalism because of land dispossession that befell Africans in the land of their birth. Under the farm labor tenancy system, it meant Mkhulu and his siblings, just like his parents, were destined to be a farm labor. He had to be groomed to plow and tend the plants and livestock of the past. The type of system regrettably still obtains today in some parts of our country 25 years into democracy. Indeed, it is not yet uhuru for the majority of our people in our country. Ironically, Mkhulu made a narrow escape from that ordeal in 1934, when his family, post the death of our late great-grandfather, Matia, were forced out of the farm because the male figure of the female was no more. Saved by the death of his father, what a paradox. Mkhulu, among many things, was very passionate about education. Some of the people who used to quote him often thus, Marcus Garvey, who used to quote him often thus, I quote, "Liberate the mind of a man, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men," close quote. Mkhulu would always say he thought Garvey was asserting the primacy of education in its totality. That is the investment in actual education that leads to knowledge production rather than knowledge regurgitation. Education ranging from what one can call real education, which in most cases is an informal survival kit that uses indigenous value system to get one to think and act upon his or her thoughts in accordance with one's societal needs. However, the world has changed a lot, and it will be foolhardy to believe that indigenous knowledge system alone can beat the odds of the moment. Only the combination of formal and informal education can catapult humanity to greater heights. Both formal and informal education, if well coordinated, can combat and finally defeat the COVID-19. Mkhulu also used to quote his fellow comrade, Nelson Mandela, who said, and I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world," close quote. To my peers, young people, and fellow mourners, let's take this as an instructive call to action. In honor of Mkhulu and fellow founding fathers and mothers of the era gone past, let us spring into action. Action to create an environment that empowers the people to be the captains of their ships insofar as their lives are concerned. Moreover, empowering people to be change agents in dealing with conditions of our country. Mkhulu used to tell us that amongst the first thing that they fought on the very first day they landed in Robben Island was the right to study, the right to education. Mkhulu said one of their biggest jail fears was to be, Mkhulu said one of the biggest jail they were scared of over and above the rough cold waters of the island and brutal apartheid weathers was jail of the mental ignorance and slavery. When their right to study beyond matriculation certificate was granted in 1967, Mkhulu was the first inmate to enroll for a BA degree in public administration. The journey was bumpy, but after 12 years of unrelenting struggle, poor behavior, finally obtained his degree. He later persuaded an honors degree in political science, which he received with distinction. At the time of his release from prison, he was left with 3 courses to complete a degree in law. I'm sketching this plot of his educational journey to demonstrate how committed Mkhulu was insofar as education is concerned. As our country and continent, how far have we traversed insofar as our commitment into education? It will be remiss of me not to mention the principles mentioned in the draft declaration and plan of action adopted at the Dakar African Higher Education Summit in 2019. As many of you might be aware, the product of the conference captured the following as principle. I will not go through them, but I will proceed to my next point and ask the question. If we were to measure ourselves as the country and continent, where do we rate ourselves in a scale of 1 to 10? In honor of this humble crusader of human rights and education, I think African scholars, activists, and all men and women of goodwill owe it to his memory to respond frankly to these questions. In one of his interviews, he boldly asserted that, and I quote, "Without giving our children quality education, the future of our country is doomed," close quote. He also said, and I quote, "You cannot hope to build a successful, equal, and prosperous country without investing your efforts and resources to education." Cool. As your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, we will miss you. We will continue to run and take on the baton that you have left with us. And we will miss you in our hearts, but we know that you will be in our hearts and you will live in our hearts forever. The Maya Hunter, clocks and clocks. We are releasing you with heavy hearts, but we will continue to love you. Farewell.
Words and for sharing him with us and the world. I would like now to go back to the SWAPO speaker, who we couldn't hear earlier, Honorable Comrade Jerry Nkonjo.
Comrade Directors of Ceremonies, the bereaved family of the late Comrade Excellency Comrade Sherry Ramaphosa,
is he still here? Okay.
President of the end of the Republic of Comrade David Mabuza, Deputy President of the ANC rank and file, and on behalf of the SWAPO Party of Namibia, its entire leadership and rank and file, I am honored to express this message of condolences to the African National Congress on the occasion of the memorial service of the late comrade and friend of the SWAPO Party, Comrade Andrew Mlangeni. The SWAPO Party has learned with a deep sense. Comrade Mlangeni joined the countless icons of our struggle for self-determination, whose esteemed contribution laid the path for our independence and freedom. It is therefore appropriate the SWAPO Party and the ANC continue with this sacred cordial relationship for eternity. Therefore, on behalf of the SWAPO Party leadership, as well as its rank and file, and indeed on behalf, it is with profound humility and respect that I extend our sincere and deepest condolences to the bereaved family for the loss of a beloved husband, son, father, brother in arms, and above all, a fellow freedom fighter. May the Almighty Lord give you solace and strength during this moment of sorrow and bereavement. May the soul of this gallant son of the African soil rest in eternal peace. Long live the friendship between the ANC and the SWAPO Party. I thank you.
Long live, thank you. I would like to go back to Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. who we couldn't hear earlier. Thank you.
Honorable Minister and Director of Programs, and also Minister Sulu, Director of Programs, His Excellency Nkulua, our former President, leaders of our nation, veterans of our struggle, and friends throughout the world. I consider it a very particular honor to speak about my brother, Isithwalandwe, as we remember his remarkable life. I've spoken often about the leadership, about his legacy, and about his character. Most recently, at the celebration of his 95th birthday, I also spoke. It has always been a pleasure and a great honor. I have the greatest admiration to Dr. Andrew Mlangeni, and I thank the Mlangeni family for giving me this honor, and also the African National Congress. Over the past few days, I've been asked several times what the new generation can learn from his life. The answer is quite easy. The new generation, what the new generation can learn is responsibility. Isithwalandwe had an unerring sense of responsibility, believing that if South Africa was to change, it was up to him to change it. That driving force was evident in him, as other speakers have indicated, from the very beginning of his life. And I was saying how shocking it is that on the day we're paying this tribute, our largest newspaper, the Sunday Times, is a headline which indicates the extent to which this country is steeped in the pandemic of corruption. I remember when we were young men and students, how we worked hand in hand in everything, believing that this contribution of ours mattered. I've often recounted how we wrote matric at the same time in 1947. I was at Adams College, and Dr. Mlangeni and my friend, Mr. Joe Matthews, was at St. Peter's in Rosettenville in Johannesburg. And we like to boast at that time that we're not simply writing a senior certificate exam, but that we in fact took the joint matriculation board examinations, which were far more important in our minds than others. There was that sense, even at that time, that nothing short of our best was actually acceptable. It was inevitable that we would become political activists in our lives. At school, Dr. Mlangeni found himself being taught by none other than our icon, Mr. Oliver Tambo, while I had classes under one of our icons, Professor Z.K. Matthews. Being exposed, therefore, to such great minds and great leaders, we were encouraged to believe that South Africa could, in fact, be changed. And born into a struggle to identify rights of our people. Dr. Mlangeni lived through some of the most unique moments in South Africa's history, as has been indicated by all speakers. He saw our country becoming a sovereign, independent state. He saw the National Party take power and adopt the policy of apartheid in 1948. He saw the beginning of a campaign of civil disobedience and the banning of Africa's oldest liberation movement, the African National Congress, and of course other organizations like the PAC as well. He saw the creation of homelands and the forced removals of our people, student uprisings, township revolt, and a state of emergency. And thanks God, he also saw apartheid crumble and negotiations begin. So the birth of democracy and the beginning of a journey to build a nation. He saw the triumph of human rights, and he saw 5 democratically elected presidents of this country, and he saw the growth of South Africa's footprint in the international arena. Tragical though, he also saw missteps that I've referred to just now, the burgeoning of corruption and the stagnation of our economic growth in our country. But he saw our nation return to hope again and again, enduring suffering, pursuing unity, and believing that we can, in fact, emerge victorious. That is a remarkable life. It does not begin to capture, anyway, the life of this gentle giant, Dr. Andrew Mlangeni. It simply provides the context in which he lived. But it is important because Dr. Mlangeni was never just a spectator, as has been indicated by every speaker. He was a man of action, deeply involved and always participating. He taught, he sacrificed, he served, and he led. One could not have asked for a better compatriot. Dr. Mlangeni was committed, he was courageous, and he was smart. A man of unshakable principles, who was always prepared to do the hard work of liberation. When he spoke, we all listened, because we could trust that whatever he said was motivated by his great love for his country. It gave him guts, in other words, to say what needed to be said. I understand why Dr. Mlangeni was never able to stop serving, even like myself, into the twilight of his life. That love of country and that spirit of responsibility never faded. As much as we talk about public life, however, it is our private lives that we find the greatest joy, and perhaps too little has been said about the wonderful support that he received from his beautiful and beloved wife, June, and their children and their grandchildren and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Having been blessed myself with a long marriage, I know what that meant to him. I want to thank Dr. Mlangeni and his children for lending us his grandchildren and great-grandchildren because of the service that he gave to our country. We all feel as though he belonged to us only, but truly speaking, he was yours. The greatest loss has been suffered by the Mlangeni family, and it is you, the Mlangeni family, that will extend our deepest sympathy. Please know that you have our prayers at this difficult time and support. I cannot help but think of what my brother said when he lost those that were close to him. It will not be long, he said, before he was with them again, as stated just now by his eldest daughter. For me, perhaps that is truer at my age than it is for many of you. But the reality is that we'll all arrive at the day right when we slip the mortal coil and step into eternity. This life, of course, is not permanent, so it matters therefore how we live it. Dr. Mlangeni lived it with zest, he lived it with courage, and he lived it with hope. We'll remember him with gratitude for showing us the way. Hamba kahle khawela maqhawe, hamba kahle gasela, robala handle, Tate Mlangeni.
Ngiyacela na.
Thank you, Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Our next speaker needs no introduction. fellow prisoner from Robben Island. He worked with Comrade Mlangeni on the Interim Leadership Corps, and ever since, through various capacities. He also wrote the foreword to Comrade Mlangeni's biography. Former Secretary General and Deputy President of the African National Congress, and former President of the Republic, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, President Wamaloba, is ideally placed, therefore, to speak on behalf of the many officials of the ANC over the last 30 years, to whom Comrade Mlangeni always gave wise counsel. Over to you, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the leadership of the African National Congress, the Secretary General Isithwalandwe, the Treasurer General Paul Mashatile, the family of our leader, the Mlangeni family and the Lidwaba family, the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, leaders of the Alliance, Comrade Peking Chalin Chali and Comrade Solima Paila, our veterans, Comrade Snuki Zigalala, Comrade Spiwe Nyanda, Comrade Ronnie Castros, the trustees of the June and Andrew Mlangeni Foundation, represented by the chair, Professor Thengiwe Mkhize, and Minister Mbalula, Fikile Mbalula, fraternal leadership, comrade and honorable member Jerry Ekanjo of SWAPO, Lord Jonathan Oates, Major General Chang, comrades and friends. Today, as we gather here to pay last respects to one of our most revered servant leaders, we reflect on the life of Date Andrew Mokiti Mlangeni, the last of our leaders who stood trial in the state versus the National High Command and others, colloquially known as the Rivonia trial. He departed from our midst at a time when our nation and the rest of the world are being ravaged by the coronavirus, which has disrupted practically all human life as we've come to understand it. Comrade Andrew will be remembered as a giant among giants, a leader of our struggle who embodied the very core of what our struggle represented and stood for. His death fills us with a deep sense of ambivalence in that we mourn and celebrate all at once the rich life of this wonderful leader of our people. At his recent birthday, he expressed his gratitude for reaching the ripe age of 95, and we all witnessed how, even in old age, he remained vibrant, affable, and highly perceptive. Until his last day, he lived his life in the service of the people, offering extraordinary contributions to the cause of justice. Date Andrew Mlangeni was an elder on whose counsel one could rely because he was truthful, earnest, and dependable. He generously gave us his knowledge and skills, his pleasant, passionate, and upright nature shone throughout his life. Now, more than any time since we attained our freedom, we have a responsibility to take stock of our actions, our attitudes, and our behavior, and to hold up the generation of leaders such as Mlangeni, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Elias Mtswaledi, Gavin Mbeki, Ruth Mumpati, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Raymond Mhlaba, Nkosi Albert Lutuli, Ahmed Kathrada, Ruth First, Bram Fisher, Dr. Yusuf Dadu, Dennis Goldbeck, Chris Hani, and Nelson Mandela and their peers. Revolutionary of our times, and we should always remember that his and his generation's struggle was not for posterity, but to improve the conditions and quality of life of our people right now. This we should never forget. And in the words of renowned poet Bertolt Brecht in his poem entitled To Posterity, he says, even the hatred of squalor makes the brow grow stern. Even anger against injustice makes the voice grow harsh. Alas, we who wished to lay the foundations of kindness could not ourselves be kind. But you, when at last it comes to pass that man can help his fellow man, do not judge us too harshly. Comrade Andrew Mlangeni and his generation took up arms, not because they were warmongering, but precisely because they wished to lay the foundations of kindness. Let us not judge them too harshly. Comrade Andrew and his generation set the highest standards for all freedom fighters and indeed all the people of South Africa. Therefore, we who say farewell to him must pledge to each other in the name of the people of South Africa that we will always remember their contribution, that we will live up to their example, and that we will continue with determination to complete and improve the task to which they dedicated their lives. Our pledge must be a call to action for every citizen to be vigilant. Let us join hands to eradicate corruption from all our systems. Comrade Andrew leaves behind a void that will not be easy to fill. Our lives will be empty in the areas that he had brightened for us. He led a life that is worthy of celebration, a life that exemplified patriotism, a life that inspired others. He did not live in vain, and therefore he will live on even after death. He might not speak anymore, but he has left us an enduring legacy of communion and love, which is captured by James Baldwin as follows, and I quote, "It demands great spiritual resilience not to hate the hater whose foot is on your neck, and an even greater miracle of perception and charity not to teach your child to hate." Close quote. And as I conclude, I take this opportunity to convey our most heartfelt condolences to the family of Date Mlangeni, his sister and Priscilla, his children, Maureen, Sylvia, Sillo, and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. Your loss is our loss, even though we may not quite fully understand your pain. Take solace in the knowledge that we condole with you. Rubala ka kgotso Mutlokwa, rubala ka kgotso Isithwalandwe, Seaparangwe. And I thank you for your attention.
Over to Comrade Lindiwe.
It's no video now. It's fine. Comrade Khalema, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your words of comfort. Your words have inspired us to emulate Comrade Mlangeni so that we too can be counted on to have held up all the ideals of the
National Executive Committee and all leaders of the ANC, leadership of the ANC Women's League, leadership the ANC Veterans League, the leadership of the Alliance, comrades and friends, fellow compatriots. 3 weeks ago, I had the privilege to be honored by Babu Mlangeni. Babu Mlangeni joined a Zoom conversation where he conveyed to me and my family his sincere condolences for the passing of my mother and my wife. He was not very well on that day, but he insisted on that Zoom conversation. I was comforted by his kind words. And at the end of that discussion, Comrade Mlangeni said to me, "When is the day of the funeral?" And I said to him, "On Thursday." Then Comrade Mlangeni said in response, "We are coming to the funeral, so I will see you on Thursday." I wanted to discourage him because I thought, having conveyed his message of condolences, that was enough. He didn't have to come to the funeral. But unfortunately, I didn't have the courage to stop him. So we ended our conversation with me saying to him, "I will see you on Thursday." Little did I know that that was the last day I was speaking to him. It was, in fact, a goodbye. So, once more, my father, goodbye. I will see you on another Thursday. Ayahamba amaqhawe ethu, ziyahamba inkokeli zethu. A giant baobab tree has fallen, one of the foremost stalwarts of our struggle for liberation. Isithwalandwe siaparankwe, Ubabu Andrew Mlangeni is no more. Death has robbed of a humble, dependable, trustworthy, disciplined leader of our movement and the people of South Africa. A gentle revolutionary, a decent man of honor. Our much and admired Babu Mlangeni has been painfully taken away from us. I take this opportunity on behalf of Babu Mlangeni's organization, the African National Congress, to convey our heartfelt condolences to Babu Mlangeni's children, the grandchildren, the entire Mlangeni family, your relatives and loved ones, as well as comrades to Babu Mlangeni and his friends. To all of you, we say, Agwehlanga lungehlanga. Babu Mlangeni has run a good race. His was a life well lived, an exemplary life worthy of emulation. For him, it is mission accomplished. May his soul rest in peace. We will always remember Babu Mlangeni for his bravery that will be used to pursue the freedom of all South Africans. As the remaining Rivonia trialist, Babu Mlangeni belonged to that revered generation of freedom fighters who provided a higher service to humanity without expecting personal gain, who were undaunted by the challenges they faced. They were prepared to make the highest sacrifice for liberation. These were leaders who would not ask of others to do things that they themselves were not prepared to do. They never believed that they were entitled to better treatment and a better life, while the majority of the people were subjected to oppression and exploitation. Babu Mlangeni was always there to guide us, to caution us, and to provide wise counsel when we needed it the most. He served his country and his beloved movement, the African National Congress, with absolute commitment, honor, and dignity. He continued to be the moral compass and conscience of our movement and our nation. He remained an activist to the end, always concerning himself with responding to the plight of the poor and the vulnerable. To him, even Robben Island was a terrain of struggle, a site for activism. He was at ease with ordinary people. He immersed himself deeply in their daily struggles. As a member of parliament, he prioritized issues affecting ordinary people. Up to his last days, he dreamt of and worked tirelessly towards a country where all shall enjoy prosperity, equality, and dignity. Even today, as the country battles against the coronavirus pandemic, Babu Mlangeni continued to urge us to do everything necessary to defeat this pandemic. By force of example, Babu Mlangeni taught us the vital lessons of leadership: humility, hard work, loyalty, selflessness, sacrifice, and above all, service to the people. Both in action and in deeds, he always sought to deepen the democratic values of transparency, accountability, and the promotion of good governance. He always reminded us to put our country and our people first. He spoke out and called us to order when we as leaders did wrong things that brought our country and our movement into disrepute. He gently, firmly showed us the way when we lost our way. He warmed our hearts and lifted our spirits when our mood was low and when we had lost hope. His towering yet gentle presence in our midst always gave us the assurance that we stand on shoulders of giants. It assured us that the course we are pursuing was a just and noble one. It gave us hope that victory over the vestiges of apartheid that manifested in the deeply engraved and high levels of inequality, poverty, and unemployment is certain. In Babu Mlangeni, we have lost a teacher, an invaluable source of inspiration, and a fountain of unending wisdom, a walking encyclopedia of our struggle for liberation. Babu Mlangeni was a family man. He cared deeply for his beloved wife, the late Mama June Mlangeni, the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren. His attachment to his family remained unshaken, hardly deterred by his many years of imprisonment. Babu Mlangeni placed a high premium on education. He understood the power and the value of education as a liberating force. Comrades and compatriots, the passing of Babu Mlangeni signals the end of an era. It marks the passing of the last of a generation that delivered freedom in our lifetime. Babu Mlangeni's passing also heralds the handing over of the baton of struggle to a younger generation of patriots and revolutionaries. Those of us Babu Mlangeni and his generation leave behind have a historic duty to pick up their fallen spear and to carry forward their good fight. Babu Mlangeni and his extraordinary cohort of courageous leaders have shown us the way to freedom. We will follow their footsteps. We will endeavor to be like them. We will always keep in mind and practice what they taught us. Like Babu Mlangeni, we will put people first. We will serve our country and our movement selflessly with humility. Like him, do everything not for ourselves, but for the people of South Africa. We will stand firm for the values of integrity, honesty, fairness, accountability, and transparency. We will remain loyal and disciplined members of Babu Mlangeni's glorious movement, the African National Congress. Inspired by Babu Mlangeni's teachings, we will steer clear from doing wrong things. We will not be afraid to speak out and act against corruption that robs the poor of much-needed resources to better their lives. as we take over the baton of struggle from Babu Mlangeni and his generation of freedom fighters. Let us today make a solemn pledge never to betray their cause for which they stood and fought for. We will honor and defend their proud legacy. We will ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain. We will continue to build the ANC to be a formidable force for doing good, an instrument for serving the people of South Africa, and a genuine custodian of the aspirations of our people. In the face of the many challenges in our country and our movement, we will remain stilled and determined. Like Babu Mlangeni, we will refuse to allow adversity to defeat nor derail us. We will remain undaunted. We will summon the courage of Babu Mlangeni and his generation as we renew and unite our movement. We will do everything, not for ourselves, but for our movement and the people of South Africa. Drawing lessons from Babu Mlangeni's life, we are clear that the renewal of the ANC must include deliberate action aimed at closing the social distance between our movement and the people of our country. Ours must be a listening movement that is not arrogant, a movement that is responsive to the conditions of the people, and a movement that speaks the language of the people. We must stand for and not against the people. The renewal of the ANC must also include the restoration of the historic values of our movement, the values of hard work, honesty, unity, selflessness, sacrifice, discipline, democratic debate, criticism, and self-criticism. Renewal must also include ensuring that the ANC remains a true parliament of the people of South Africa, united in their diversity. To renew the ANC, we will require that we do everything necessary to build an ethical movement. Demands that we win the war against corruption. Comrades, Babu Mlangeni's life was a life well lived, a life of service to others. As he said during the Rivonia trial, he did all what he did not for himself, but for the people of South Africa. It is therefore fitting that as we bid him farewell, we draw from the words of the Russian author Nikolai Ostrovsky, who said the following to say about life well lived. And I quote him, "Man's dearest possession is life. It is given to him but once, and he must live it so as to feel no torturing regrets for wasted years. Never know the burning shame of a mean and petty past. So live that dying, he might say, all my life, all my strength were given to the finest cause in the world, the fight for the liberation of mankind." Close quote. We have no doubt that Babu Mlangeni will rest in peace in the knowledge that all his life, all his strength were given to the finest cause in the world, the fight for the liberation of mankind. Lala ngoxolo Isithwalandwe, robala ka khotso seaparangwe. You did everything you did not for yourself, but for us. And for that we owe you a great debt of gratitude. Go rest now, our Father. You leave behind a proud legacy. Hamba kahle Mkhonto. Viva the African National Congress. Viva. Thank you very much.
And now we ask all of you who are taking part in this memorial service, wherever you are, please to stand up as the obituary is being read, except for the family. Thank you.
Obituary of Andrew Mokete Moeti Mlangeni. The upbringing. Andrew Mokete Moeti Mlangeni was born on the 6th of June 1925 at Matoding, later renamed Maynard Fontaine Farm, outside Bethlehem, in the then Boer Republic of the Orange Free State, now the Free State Province. He is the ninth of 12 children of Matia and Aleta Mlangeni, and belonged to one of the 3 sets of twins by the couple. His parents were farm tenants. His father passed away when he was 6 years old and was brought up by his mother with the assistance of his elder brothers. In 1934, his family moved from the farm to a rented accommodation in the Bethlehem town. He moved to Johannesburg in 1941 when his mother permanently relocated there. In Johannesburg, Andrew stayed with his elder brother, Sekila, in Pimville, and later at a makeshift settlement in the day Orlando Township, before he found his current house in Dube in 1954, which became his home until his death. He met June Johanna Letwaba in 1948, and they married in 1950. They were blessed with 4 children, 2 girls, Maureen and Sylvia, and 2 boys, Sello and Aubrey, who predeceased him. He started school at the age of 11 in Bethlehem, when he enrolled himself at a local church-run school and passed Standard 4 in 1941. He later enrolled for Standard 5 at Pimville Government in 1942 and passed Standard 6 in 1943. In 1944, he enrolled at St. Peter's Secondary School in Rosettenville, where he passed Form 3 in 1946. He could not proceed beyond junior certificate because of financial constraints. He later managed to complete matric through correspondence from Robben Island through Rapid Results College, as well as BA in Public Administration in 1975 and BA Honours in Political Science in 1983 with UNISA, obtaining the latter cum laude. His law degree was disrupted by the negotiations at CODESA. Mlangeni took employment at Jeffrey and Galleon in 1947 to 1955 as a printing assistant. The position benefited the South African Communist Party and the African National Congress communication units because he would sneak in on weekends to print their posters, banners, and flyers. From 1955 to 1958, he joined as a bus driver, a position he left because of his left-wing views against exploitation. The political life. Mlangeni was recruited to the Young Communist League by Ruth First in 1944, where he worked with the likes of Elisa Watts and Joe Slovo. From 1959, he became a full-time functionary of the South African Communist Party, as well as its secretary of the Johannesburg region, responsible for black groups, alongside Esther Parcell, who was responsible for white groups. He also participated in the activities of the African National Congress Youth League, Rosettenville branch, from 1944, where he worked with the likes of Joe Matthews, Duma Nokwe, Fats Ngakane, and Henry Makoti. However, he formally joined the African National Congress Youth League in 1951 and the African National Congress itself in 1954 and became the longest serving secretary of the African National Congress Dube branch, which he also represented as a delegate at the Congress of the People in Kliptown, where the Freedom Charter was adopted. He served in the South African Communist Party and the ANC leadership structures of the Johannesburg Area Committee, where he worked with the likes of Nelson Mandela, Elias Mtwaledi, Alfred Khasago, Arthur Sapane, John and Obed Mutabi, Dan Tlome, and Andrew Kunene. He also worked with Ruth First to support the mine workers' strike of 1946, spearheaded by the Communist Party's aligned African Miners Union and the leadership of J.B. Marx and Dento. When peaceful means of expressing dissatisfaction with political marginalization and economic deprivation by the apartheid minority regime was barred to the majority, Andrew was recruited by Nelson Mandela as the first Umkhonto weSizwe foot soldier in 1961. Later that year, he, together with Joe Klabi, Abel Mthembu, Raymond Mhlaba, Steve Naidu, Wilton Mkwai, became the first MK members to be sent for sophisticated military training in China. Here, he and Naidu were specifically selected for advanced military communication techniques and manufacturing of explosives due to their advanced level of mathematics. During this time, he met one of his heroes, Mao Zedong, who gave him a message to relay to the African National Congress leadership that the ANC should bring a bigger number for training than it had done with their group. On his return in the early 1963, he joined the underground unit of MK, Umkhonto weSizwe, and became a member of its high command. His major responsibilities at the time were recruitment of people and dispatching them for military training outside the country. It was during these activities that he disguised as a priest under the pseudonyms Reverend Percy Mukwena and Percy Mbata. Among the people he dispatched to exile included Joe Modise and Chris Hart. He was arrested with Mutwaledi on 24 June 1963 on the National Raid Day and charged with the Zeerust group, which had been intercepted by the security forces in Zeerust after Andrew tried to dispatch them for military training outside the country. However, he and Motsoaledi were acquitted from the Zeerust trial because of lack of evidence against them. But the acquittal was short-lived because they were engaged in the Rivonia treason trial, together with many other leaders who had been arrested at a raid at Lily's Leaf Farm on 11 July 1963, as well as Mandela, who was serving a 5-year sentence following his trial in 1962. Before the court passed judgment on him, Mlangeni told the court that though the leaders of many countries throughout the world have tried to persuade the government to abandon its apartheid policy, and although resolutions have been passed in the United Nations against South Africa, this has met with no result. All the government has done is to reply to the people's demands by putting their political leaders in jail and breaking up families. He was found guilty alongside Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Governor Mbeki, Raymond Mhlaba, Ahmed Kathrada, Dennis Goldberg, Wilton Mkwai, and Elias Motsoaledi, and sentenced on 12 June in 1964 to life imprisonment. With the exception of Goldberg, who was detained inland, the rest were sent to Robben Island. He was prisoner 46764. He was prisoner 46764. He was released from prison after 26 years in October 1989, with the likes of Sisulu, Ahmed Kathrada, Wilton Mkwai, Raymond Mhlaba, and Oscar Mbeta. He immediately became a member of the internal ANC structure led by Sisulu. He also served as transport head at the ANC's Shell House after his election into the National Executive Committee in 1991. After the first democratic elections in 1994, he became an ANC member of parliament in Cape Town until he retired in 2014. In 2012, he became chairperson of the ANC's Integrity Commission because of his integrity and ethical conduct. Mlangeni was passionate about sport of golf, through which made many friends. He founded the June and Andrew Mlangeni Foundation in 2009 to continue with the community charity work that his wife had started whilst he was in prison. Mlangeni received the following honors. 1. Isithwalandwe Siaparangwe in 1992, the highest award by the African National Congress to those who made an outstanding contribution and sacrifice to the liberation struggle. 2. National honors in the form of presidential orders for meritorious service, class 1, gold from President Mandela in 1999. 3. Honorary doctorates from University of South Africa in 2013. Honorary doctorate from Rhodes University in 2018. Honorary doctorate from Durban University of Technology in 2018. Honorary doctorate from Cape Peninsula University of Technology in 2019. 4. Freedom of the city of Sidibe. 5. Freedom of the city of Johannesburg in 2016. 6. Freedom of the city of London in 2018. Mlangeni is survived by his younger sister, Fedile, 2 daughters, Sylvia and Maureen, 1 son, Sello, 10 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. Ambaka Semutokwa, Isithwalandwe, Siaparangwe. The nation mourns your departing. Your memory will remain in the hearts and minds of freedom and peace-loving peoples of the world.
Thank you to the General, Comrade Paul Mashatile, for the eulogy, and thank you very much for the obituary. We now conclude the proceedings of the memorial service of our stalwart Comrade Ndate Mlangeni, who was both our revolutionary and our moral compass. We thank the family, all the speakers, leadership and participants on the different media platforms that were part of this event. Those who still want to convey their condolences to the family, there is an ANC memorial page where you can leave messages, and these will be compiled for the family. Virtual prayer service will still continue on Monday from 1700 to 1600 hours. Details will be shared on the ANC platform. The official funeral category 1, when we lay Isithwalandwe and Mlangeni to rest, will take place on Wednesday, the 29th July 2020, from 7:30 in the morning, and will be broadcast live on television and other social media platforms. Thank you once again to all who joined us from across the country, the continent, and the world. Thank you to the family of our beloved Babu Mlangeni, both for allowing us to have this memorial, but also for sharing him with us. Please wash your hands, wear your mask, and keep your social distance. This is the end. Good night and stay safe. Thank you.
Andrew Mlangeni really personifies the lesser known person who was able to carry on combining efforts.
A fighter. I saw a committed man. What he says is the truth, and you, the listener, should actually follow.
Mlangeni sacrificed his life to sit in prison for life. He was prepared to die.
We need sacrifices. People have to sacrifice.
Dedicated, committed comrade, a member of the Communist Party, a member of ANC, in the liberation movement. They called him the robot. It summed up his personality. You put the switch on and say, go, and he just keeps going. Nothing will make him stop.
I know what it is to fight for freedom. I expected to be in prison at some stage, at some time.
One of the things that Comrade Mlangeni represents is a collective leadership. You don't have a leader in the ANC.
If you were to ask any member of the organization whether they joined in order to occupy positions of leadership, every one of them, the last person, will say to you, no, we are joining this organization in order to serve.
Now we talk about Madiba as the saint who single-handedly brought us freedom. And I think it does an injustice to the other great leaders and the many activists.
He is senior in this. He was part of the Rubunia tribes, but has served as an ordinary member of parliament throughout that period. To be a good leader, you have to know how to be led.
For Mlangeni to be a member of parliament was very important. He carries within himself this dignity that really represents a particular type of leadership of the ANC. Now everybody looks up to him these days, even